In this presentation, we're going to be looking at Maya 2013's powerful DirectX 11 integration. When working in DirectX 11, you can create and edit high-quality assets and images in less time using the new Maya DX11 shader. The DX11 shader provides artists with real-time, centralized, easy-to-control shader effects. Things like crack-free tessellation, vector displacement maps, translucence, reflections, and shadows are all handled. The DX11 shader is built with a new API that exposes DirectX 11 natively to Maya with high-level shader language support. Included in the DX11 shader is the Maya Uber shader, which is an HLSL shader that provides many of the common shading effects seen in next-gen games, and it provides new features in Maya like real-time tessellation on the GPU and vector displacement maps. The thing that's kind of cool about the DX11 shader plugin is it natively handles the Maya Lite hookups for you, so it gives you a very native feeling workflow inside of Maya when using external HLSL shaders. So what that means is if I go ahead and hit something like my 5 key in my viewport and go to my non-textured view, that HLSL shader that's on that monster behaves exactly like the native Maya shaders in my scene. Obviously, if I hit my 6 key to view through my default lights, which is basically the light attached to the camera, again, that lighting hookup is handled and bound automatically into that external HLSL shader for us. If we go ahead and hit our 7 key to view through our hardware lighting, all of our lights in our scene, obviously we have the effect of the strong light coming across the character, and it behaves, again, exactly the same way that the native lights did. We could even go as far as picking in a light and saying, "You selected." Again, all of this light hookup gives us a native Maya working experience. So if I start to push this light around here, you can see that the Maya native shaders that are basically doing the background and the DirectX 11 shader that's doing the character all behave in a very similar way. So let's go ahead and start to turn on some of the other features in this Maya Uber shader to start to dial in the look of this character a little bit better. So a couple of things that are worth mentioning right off the bat. The technique that we're using has tessellation turned on. What that means is we're actually tessellating this character on the GPU. So if I start to do something like a displacement map, we're going to have a nice high poly count that can be captured. That hardware tessellation is really, really cool and fast. So obviously there's lots of control inside of this Uber shader. If I expand the whole list, it gets a little unwieldy. So we're just going to dial in on a few key specifics. Obviously we can do simple rim lighting on that shader built in. What we want to do for this example is start to get a little bit more relief to our character. So we're going to do that with a normal map. So we're going to go ahead and just first turn on the normal map. We'll kind of spin this character around here, and you can see as soon as I crank that normal map on, we get a nice little bit of detail happening there. But we're really not getting any bump or we're not getting any displacement happening. So let's go ahead and turn on our vector displacement map. Now it's worth mentioning that these are tangent-based vector displacement maps that came out of Mudbox, so they can do things like undercuts. As I start to increase this displacement height, you can see that we get that really nice sort of belly fat happening on this lizard. We get these little bumps sort of happening here, and again, that's all based on that vector displacement map. So let's go ahead and play around with our diffuse. It looks a little bit harsh right now, so we're going to use the soften diffuse for skin. And what that does is it sort of pushes the transition effect of what's in shadow versus what's not in shadow to kind of soften the overall effect of that skin. So we'll kind of turn that switch on, and as you can see, as soon as I do that, we get a nice kind of soft effect to that. And watch right here in the arm as I start to, this sort of area that's directly illuminated versus the area that's not directly illuminated, as I start to push this soft diffuse value. And you can see we get this nice smooth transition of shadow to non-shadow transition happening. Let's go ahead and give this guy a little bit more ambient light on the top side there. We'll kind of darken up the bottom side slightly. So that looks pretty good. So the next thing that we're going to look at is some improvements that we can make to our specularity model. Right now we basically are just using a Phong model on that character's specularity. So if we scroll down to the spec settings for this and we turn on use the map, that kind of makes it look a little bit better, but I want to have a little bit harsher specularity coming across that glancing angle of that kind of bright light that's coming in from outside. So if we just switch our use spec for skin, you can see that we get this really nice, realistic looking specularity model across the back of that character. And then obviously as I transition to the front of this guy, it's going to have this very kind of soft, angelic look to our character. So the next thing that we want to look at really quickly is translucence. We'll kind of scroll down here to the bottom of the list here. So translucence works pretty well. If we go ahead and turn this guy on, anywhere we get any backlighting, you can see anywhere there's a directional or a point light or a spotlight that's sort of behind the character, we start to get this translucence. Obviously I've got the default settings are, he looks like a jelly bean, so let's sort of dial this in a little bit more. Let's go ahead and just give that a little bit of translucence distortion there. Maybe drop that power down a little bit or push that power up. We can also use maps. So I went ahead and painted another map in Mudbox that sort of just makes the ears a little bit more translucent than the rest of the character, and the sort of spines across the back, a little bit of translucence in the face. So if we turn on that use map, and I'll just overdrive this just so you can really see the effect of that translucence sort of coming through the character's ears here, maybe drop that distortion down a little bit more, you can see that we get this really nice effect. Obviously, if I turn this on and off, you can see the contribution of that translucence model to our character. So those are just a few examples of the powerful new things that we can do with the DX11 shader using the Maya Uber shader, which is just a provided HLSL example shader. Again, all of this can be used to integrate a DirectX 11 pipeline into your Maya workflow.